almost comical how stagnant the iPad mini has been in recent years. The 2019 version got an upgraded processor and a slightly nicer display, but essentially looked the same as the tablet that originally debuted in 2012. But that hasn't stopped the iPad mini from gaining a loyal following, and we even called the last one our favorite small tablet. Now it appears that Apple's giving the tablet the love that its devotees have been asking for. It's the most significant update the mini has received in years, and Apple's hoping you'll pay extra for it. The 2021 iPad mini starts at $499, $100 more than before, and with that, Apple is squashing any notions that smaller means lesser. Many people, myself included, were happy to see the iPad mini's facelift. It has an 8.3-inch all-screen design, which has slightly thicker bezels than the iPad Pros. It's not a huge difference, but it's more noticeable when you're working with a smaller tablet. Also, the previous iPad mini had a 7.9-inch display, so you're not getting a ton of extra screen real estate on the new model. That said, I found the bezels to be just the right size. They helped me get a better grip on the mini when I was using it as an e-reader, and I can only assume that many others will do the same. The thicker bezels also made it easy for me to watch YouTube videos while carrying the mini around my apartment. I never accidentally paused the video because the bezels gave me enough room to hold the device. Overall, I felt like I had a small version of the iPad Air the entire time I was using the mini. The designs are very similar. The iPad mini now has flat edges with a TouchID capable power button and volume adjusters at the top, and a USB-C port at the bottom. TouchID remains unchanged, although it may take you a tad longer to set up because of how narrow the button is. And it's exciting that Apple finally brought USB-C to yet another iPad, because it makes charging more efficient, and it also continues to feed us poor saps who yearn for a USB-C iPhone sometime in our lifetimes. Plus, the new design allows the second-generation Apple Pencil to neatly and magnetically stick to the right edge of the tablet. The iPad mini has new front and rear cameras, and for once, the front setup is more interesting. The 12-megapixel ultra-wide camera supports Center Stage, the feature that automatically pans and zooms to keep you in frame during video calls. Whenever I used FaceTime, I could move around my admittedly small kitchen, and the mini's camera followed me so my family could always see most of my face. There's a limit, of course. The camera followed me until I stepped out of its field of view. The updated 12-megapixel wide rear camera is also better than that on the previous mini, but I wouldn't consider it a huge selling point. We've all seen tablet photographers in the wild, but since the cameras on our phones are much more capable than those on tablets, most people will turn to the smallest screens in their pockets when they need to snap a photo. I may not have been taking a ton of photos with the iPad mini, but I used it for almost everything else that I would normally use my iPhone for. The A15 Bionic chip inside makes the mini feel zippy, and it handled everything I threw at it well. I spent most of the time watching YouTube and Netflix videos, answering messages in Gmail and Slack, taking notes in Evernote, saving wedding inspo on Pinterest, browsing cookbooks in the Kindle app, and doodling in Procreate and GoodNotes. The mini smoothly ran games like Temple Run 2, Crossy Road, and High Rise as well, even if my attempts at beating those games were anything but. The iPad mini comes in 64GB and 256GB models, and which you choose could affect the tablet's long-term performance. But it's worth noting that the 256GB model is a whopping $150 more than the base. That's a significant difference in both capacity and cost, and it follows an unfortunate pattern in the iPad lineup. You'll find the same pricing structure in the iPad Air configurations. The previous iPad mini had the same minimum storage capacity, so we didn't even get an upgrade here, and that's a shame. I'd hesitate to recommend the 64GB model to anyone that wants to use their iPad mini as a digital folder for documents, photos, books, scans, and more. You may also need more storage if you're a big Apple Pencil user. Your works of art or handwritten notes and scribbles will eat up space. The previous iPad mini supported the first-gen stylus, but this year's works with the newer model, which snapped onto the side of the mini and lined up almost perfectly. Using the Apple Pencil on a smaller tablet is a similar yet more constrained experience than on the iPad Pro. But that's not a bad thing. I actually think the iPad mini excels at being a digital notebook. It's portable enough to come with you everywhere you go, and it's much easier to balance on your palm while you jot down notes during a walking meeting. And Apple's new Quick Notes feature in iPadOS 15 is handy too. It opens a small window on the screen into which you can scribble a quick grocery list or a reminder. Serious artists will probably want to spring for an iPad with a larger screen because it gives you more space to play with, both in regular and split views. But those who are visual thinkers, those who prefer to sketch out their thoughts, will probably find the mini's screen to be sufficient. One thing that hasn't changed about the iPad mini is its estimated battery life. Apple estimates about 10 hours of runtime this year, just like the last model, and again, that's a bit of a lowball. Even though I was using the device a lot, I only had to charge it about every other day. The mini lasted an entire afternoon and evening filled with doodling, video streaming, emailing, light gaming, and more, and I was able to use it most of the next day before the battery life dropped to around 10%. The iPad mini's spec sheet has changed quite a bit, but the appeal of the tablet remains the same. It looks and feels different thanks to the redesign and a handful of new features. Still, the iPad mini remains one of Apple's most niche devices, but niche doesn't mean less than. With the iPad mini so similar to the iPad Air, you won't be sacrificing much by choosing it. However, I don't think most people will look at all the new perks, like a camera with center stage, USB-C charging, and even the A15 Bionic chip, and be persuaded to choose the iPad mini over another Apple tablet. What it will come down to, as always, is size. You probably already know if an 8-inch tablet has a place in your life, and for those looking specifically for something of this size, the iPad mini remains the best there is.